I do not eat watermelon in front of white people. I'm not going to do it. Don't give me no watermelon candy, no watermelon flavored Kool-Aid. Don't even think about giving me a watermelon slice. Now listen, I know you probably think that I'm being overly dramatic and I'm overdoing it, but let me tell you something. Anytime that I've ever been in front of some white people and I started to eat a watermelon, it's like you see someone off in the distance who realizes this is their big moment. And the light shines down from heaven and the angels are like, ah, and they know that this is their moment. And they've been practicing this one in their bedroom for weeks. And they're like, hey, I bet you really gonna enjoy that watermelon. Would you like some fried chicken too? Of course I'd like some fried chicken because fried chicken is good. But did you have to have this as your big moment again? And so 20 years ago, this is true. This is complete honesty. 20 years ago, I retired from eating watermelon in front of white people. And you still can't get me to do it. Just pretend I'm allergic to it. I'm allergic to penicillin and watermelon. Listen, my buddy Jon Bulock, he runs a YouTube channel called My Faith Adventure Blog. He is a blogger, yes, but before that, he was a dancer who actually has been on national TV. He's an incredibly talented individual, a prophetic voice. He hit me up. He said, bro, I saw your video Colorblind. My heart has been stirred by everything happening in our country. We need to sit down and have a conversation. Let's model for the world what it looks like to have a black man and a white man just talk. I'm going to ask you questions. You ask me questions. Let's not worry about sounding dumb or stupid. Let's not even worry about sounding ignorant. Let's just go ahead and just have some courage to have some real conversation. And so I hope that this is just a good example. I hope it makes you think. I hope it makes you ponder some things. And whatever it is that it makes you do, make sure you let us know down below. So without further ado, this is part 1 of ColorBlind Conversations. This one is entitled Watermelon and White People. Jon, I'm black, you're white. There's things about you and your experience that I don't know. There's things about my experience and the way I've lived my life that you don't know about and you've never seen. We're both Christian men. We have that in common. But even Christianity is so varied and so wide that it's like everything that can be something that can be used to unify us can also be something to divide us. Let's spend some time talking about how it is that you and I, two men, can see eye to eye, can find compromise, can find truth, can find wisdom, and can find grace. What is something that's on your heart right now that you feel like you need to ask or you need to talk about when it comes to race, when it comes to the black experience, when it comes to faith? What's something that's stirring you up in this moment that you just want to be able to talk about?
I think the biggest thing for me that's really been moving me, and I would love to ask you this question. I would say, if there was one mindset that you have seen specifically in the white Christian world as we've been going through this moment that you believe is just hurtful and is damaging to you as a black man, what is that mindset that you've been seeing, and do you have any ideas about how we could change that?
Good question. Whew. That's a loaded question, right?
You know what? Break it, that is a huge question. Maybe break it up into just 2 parts. Like maybe just what is a mindset that you have experienced at the hands of white Christian people in this moment regarding race that has been the most hurtful, the most damaging that you've experienced personally? And maybe something that's not like totally inflammatory over the top, like I just don't like black people, but something that's more like, where people like myself may even be right now. I don't know.
So, in the audience, I know the audience doesn't know you that well yet. They'll get to know you as we go through this video, and they'll get a chance to learn a couple of things about you if they don't know me yet. But I'm gonna be honest. Me personally, right? When you talk about the people who are just like, I don't like black people, those are actually not the people I'm most uncomfortable with in life. I'm very comfortable with those people because you make yourself so apparently known, and at least I know where I stand with you. I have a larger issue personally as a man with someone who injustice happens, or something that I perceive as injustice, something that it doesn't strike me as being okay. It doesn't strike me as being all right. And I see someone not even click and watch the video, and then jump into a Facebook comment stream, or jump onto Twitter, or go to my job and start talking and present their opinions, but you can tell that they didn't actually watch with a clean slate. So what happens is they'll say something like, well, you know, that you gotta follow the rules. I mean, if you don't break the law, you won't have a problem. Where's your compassion? Where's your appeal to justice? Tamir Rice, a little boy playing with a toy gun, and you don't see the police officers try to talk to him, talk anything down. Like, we see police standoffs on a pretty consistent basis in our world. We see armed militias take over buildings and they get talked down. And we watch literally within 2 seconds a car stop, man, get out, shoot, done. Well, you don't know how hard it is for a police officer to do his job. Right, but like, can we acknowledge that the police officer is the one with the training? The police officer is the one who was trained to discern the situation, trained to disarm the situation. And so I'm not saying that I want all my all my white brothers and sisters to agree with everything that I agree with and see. I don't think that's realistic.
Yeah.
What I want is for you to take things case by case, scenario by scenario, and just say, if the person was white, would that have happened? And sometimes it would have. Sometimes somebody was out of line, they were out of order, and that officer was trying to protect himself. And yes, the media is hyped, and yes, individuals are hyped, but I can justify why the officer did it, because he has a family to go home to. But some cases, you would have to watch and say, 8 minutes. 8 minutes and 31 seconds, he was on that man's neck, and there was other officers nearby, and nobody ever said, hey, maybe we don't need to stay on his neck. We probably can take him to the police car now. Something, at some point we can transition. 8 minutes and 31 seconds of a knee on a neck, you can't justify it. Here's where I would take that too. I watched an interview with the police chief of the officer who had his knee on the neck, and he was on camera, and they said, do you feel like the work of your officers was justified? You've seen the footage. He said, no, that's not what we train our men to do. That was not the right thing. That's why I fired him. They said, well, what about the other officers? Do you think that they have a role to play? He said, I fired all of them. They all are responsible in my eyes. That's why they were all fired. So when you go on social media, and that's just one example, right? When you go on social media, you see a lot of my Christian brothers and sisters trying to justify even the George Floyd death, saying the officers were justified. If that's the case, why didn't their boss think so? And just ask yourself, are you jumping to someone's defense because of your politics? Yes. Are you jumping to someone's defense because of your background? Are you jumping to someone's defense because you think they're defenseless? Or are you jumping to their defense because you analyzed the situation fully, looked at your heart totally, and at the end of it, decided that was really the right thing? And usually people haven't taken the time to really analyze that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and honestly, I want to share something with you that I mean to say this because I kind of want to see if I can offer a perspective that's more so inside of, and I think there are some differences between myself and some of the people that you're describing. Mm-hmm. I personally, you know, I didn't feel as much of a need to almost like defend the actions of a lot of the police officers in a lot of these cases. But I absolutely am friends with a lot of people who were in that place, who are Christians who I love and who I think love Jesus Christ with all their hearts. And I want to offer to you what I believe was motivating those things that they were saying to you. Okay? What I believe was motivating them saying things like, well, you know what you can do with Skittles, right? You can do this or that, or you know, that person shouldn't have been stealing cigarettes. When they say those things, that is coming from a political heart and a political spirit, because when you enter into that conversation, what you find is all the voices that are saying this is injustice, and this is like on a CNN level, this is like a mass media level. The voices that are saying this is murder, this is wrong, are oftentimes the same voices that are saying other things that they don't agree with politically. And so they're inclined to not believe what those people are saying. And then in the same breath, and the same, you know, on the other side, the people who have political agendas, saying that the police were justified, there's no problem with the police. Those people in the past have said things that deeply resonate with them, and they look to them as trusted advisors. So what's happening is a person is not watching the footage and actually cleansing themselves of politics and watching as a human filled with the Spirit and filled with the love of God. They're watching as a political being, because the method by which they're receiving that message is a political method. It's CNN, it's Fox News, it's ABC, it's the New York Times, it's these very politically charged things. And so that is clouding our vision. That is causing us to want to take sides and not even pause to consider, oh my God, someone's son, someone's little boy, his life was ended. It was filmed. It was brutal. And now a family is mourning their little boy. We can't even go there.
And let me take you a step further, you know, like as believers, right? I'm thinking about a scripture. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. So what happens is we let ourselves go to TV shows, Facebook articles, Twitter articles of people who believe what we already believed. A lot of times, that people who we know are going to get us revved up. That's why we're going there. And sometimes we're assuming that all that's happening is that we wanted truth. And because we wanted truth, we went to the place of truth. But scripture says, no good thing dwelleth in me. When Paul is talking about like walking in the spirit versus walking in your flesh. And you and I both know, when it comes to living life, we are human beings who have been reborn. So we're broken vessels who have been given new life. But this is an everyday battle to overcome this flesh. And sometimes there is something within us that I think wants to be stimulated, wants to be excited, wants to be riled up. And now there is something where now it's the marionettes and the puppets. And all of our emotions are getting stirred up. And now I'm so angry, I won't listen to you. Now I'm so fired up, I won't take in anything you have to say. And I don't care if you're talking about CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and I've done that. I've watched the same news story on every station just to see. At the end of the day, there's the days of journalism where journalism is just, I tell you the facts, I let you decide. That doesn't exist for most stations in 2020. For most stations, it is about emotional, trying to light a fire under your emotions. And I think that it's important for us as believers and as just responsible human beings, because obviously some people who are going to watch this, They're just people. They don't necessarily know what faith they're a part of, or they're just not a part of a faith, but they're trying to look for truth in life. We have to be able to say, okay, I think I got some of the facts. Now I'm going to shut off the TV and I'm going to go back over this situation and I'm going to search my heart. And I'm not necessarily going to not be a person who stands by my values and my morals and my convictions, but I'm going to ask myself, is there anything I'm missing?
Yeah.
That's why we're even having this conversation. You reached out to me and you told me you were trying to look inside yourself. You were trying to analyze some of where you are in your life. You wanted to be able to say, how can I grow? How can I change? And some of that has been you alone with God. And some of that has been you and your friends, some of your Black friends and some of your white friends. And some of it is you, yourself, and you all by yourself, just saying, what is going on in here? Jon, isn't that what everyone should be doing at a time like this? Searching to figure out what you're missing, figuring out what it is you're getting wrong?
Absolutely. What I feel is happening inside of me is that God is basically, he's confronting me. He's confronting me and basically showing me that there's work to be done in this area, even though at one point in my life, I was about to marry a Black woman from Haiti. So not part of African American culture, but Black nonetheless. And I have had people around me my whole life who are Black people, and some of the deepest relationships I've had are with Black people. And God is still confronting me and saying, Jon, your personal mindsets and thoughts are contributing to a nationwide problem, and you can actually help solve this problem, Jon. You can be a part of a shift in this country where actual racial reconciliation can be birthed. It can grow, it can happen. And this is where I think I want everyone to be, is not just a place of introspection, and not just a place of feeling, bad because we're not perfect, but ultimately a place of empowerment and a place of hope, because I can actually help my brothers and sisters of other colors, of other races, of other communities, simply by changing the way that I think. And it doesn't have to be a big dramatic, I spend thousands of dollars on charity relief programs, or I go out to physical protests, or I travel to Washington, D.C. and talk with senators. But literally, I can just change the way that I think, and I can look around myself at other people that I know, and I can also gently and lovingly encourage them to maybe re-examine some things. And just that can start planting seeds in our land for healing, reconciliation, harmony, love, and ultimately revival.
Yes.
Real Holy Spirit revival can break out as a result of me just making adjustments to the way that I think and feel about race.
And let me have a moment of real transparency with you, right? So I was talking to my stepdad the other day, right? And we just we're real close, so we always have these heart to hearts. And so we're having this conversation, and I had to really come to grips with something. When I made my video, I know you've seen my video before, called ColorBlind, right? And so yes. I put out this video.
Yeah,
thank you. So I put out this video. At this point, I've never had a video get more than 400 views, right? I put it out. The video gets 13,000 views. Right? It's just God. Cause clearly, I didn't pay for advertising. I literally got an email from YouTube, and they said, we saw this video, we think it's great, we're gonna make sure people see it. I swear to God. The video only had 350 views. You would have to explain to me how, with millions of videos that come out on YouTube every day, how YouTube saw my video at 350 and reached out to me. That was just Holy Spirit, right?
Yeah.
So people started hitting up my inbox, and they would say, Maurice, I saw my childhood differently after watching your video. I grew up with you and I didn't see what was happening, but now I look back and I can see it. And let me tell you what that did to my spirit. I thought, how many of my friends, because I didn't speak the truth about what I was experiencing, I allowed them to not know some of the discrimination I was dealing with, to not know some of the bitter attitudes I was overcoming, to not know some of the racial, bigoted, and biased things that were happening in my life as a teenager. And it was happening all over in the town I grew up in. Not everyone at all, but like it was happening. And because I wasn't honest and transparent, in a way, I might have kept some people from really getting a chance to understand what really happens in life. And so some of them, like, they didn't have any other Black friends. They're like, well, shoot, I grew up with one. He was one of my best friends. He didn't have any problems. Yes, I did. But I didn't want to talk about it because there was like some normalization that occurred. My whole thing was, I can't yell and scream every time somebody says something racist to me, or every time somebody makes a watermelon joke. Every time somebody says, hey, Maurice, since we had you over to the house, we're having some fried chicken today. And it's not just like, we know that you like fried chicken. It's let's have a Black man joke. To the point where, this is the truth. I've never admitted this, especially not on camera. My wife is literally the only person who knows this, but I'm saying it on camera to you. I do not eat watermelon in front of white people because during my childhood, every time there was watermelon somewhere, there was some sort of a watermelon Black man joke. And I was like, I'm not giving people the satisfaction of seeing me eat watermelon. And I would just say, I don't like watermelon, that's why I don't eat it. I just don't like it. No, I should have said, all your guys' racist comments make me uncomfortable, so that's why I don't eat watermelon in front of you. Yeah. And in an attempt at self-preservation at 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, did I keep someone else stuck? And in the end, I'm also harnessing bitterness, right? I am keeping anger locked up inside of me. I've got frustration building up in me, and you don't know it. And so sometimes I'm looking at you as my white friend, and I love you, but I don't know how much I trust you.
Maurice, I want to ask you a question. I think that there is a lot of people, like myself, other white people out there, and they're just kind of wanting to know, why don't Black people tell us how they feel? If they're offended, if they're hurt, is it okay for you to voice that to us so that we can kind of start to get some feedback and have more compassion? But, how do you feel about maybe offering at the right time feedback, that might help us improve ourselves? Because a lot of us are very ignorant, including myself, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question. That's loaded. That's loaded. That's loaded. Okay. Loaded. The honest answer is, I think that I'm not going to speak for every Black person. I'll speak for myself and for some of the Black people that I know and am friends with, but I can't speak for everyone. I'm tired. And many of the people that I know, we're tired. I watched this interview, or not watched, I listened to it. Shout out to M Code Radio. They did this interview. This guy gets on, and he was a therapist. And he talked about how he was speaking at a seminar in front of a group of white guys. And he told the story about how he had a cousin who was murdered like when he was a teenager.
And he talked about how, you know, he gets the phone call and he drops to the floor and he feels like his life is falling apart, and it's just gut-wrenching. And he says that every person in the room, he looks around and they all just felt something, you know, and they were all like, oh my God, that's so tragic. I'm so sorry to hear that, you know. And he says, okay, now how I felt the day that happened to my cousin, it's how I feel all over again every time I turn on the news or go on Facebook and I see this graphic footage of another Black man's life being taken unnecessarily. And so it's this emotional turmoil that many of us go through. I can't say all, but many of us do, to where like sometimes we're just tired of explaining. Now, can we explain? Yes. Should we explain sometimes? Absolutely. You and I talking right now, having this dialogue, I think it's necessary. It's important for me to be able to share to some extent what I've experienced and what I've learned and what I've gone through. I think that the world needs to hear some of it. But there is also an area where like there has to be some give and some take. You can take some of my knowledge, but at some point you're going to have to do the work so that you can give yourself some of what you need. You know, there's so many books that have been written about not only the Black experience, but also about some of the like the real history of the plight of Blacks. Some of them are even written by white authors, you know, like, you know, white scholars. And there's things that you can pick up and you can read and you can learn and you can grow on your own. And it's like in 2020, there's only so much room for that word that we use called ignorance. Like, and I'm not saying ignorance like stupidity. I'm saying like, you know, they say ignorance is bliss. There's like a certain area of life where if you stay closed off to things, you don't have to deal with them. And I think right now these are moments that are being shined on everyone where we don't get to choose to be ignorant anymore. Like if we were ignorant because we just didn't know. If you just didn't know, you just never experienced something, if you just didn't know what you had inside of you, if you just didn't know about the bias that existed in the world, if you just didn't know, that's okay. But like there's so many ways you can learn. And so can you learn from us speaking more honestly? Absolutely. We all have a role that we can play in growing. We all have a role that we can play in trying to come together. I can work on my own cultural bias. I can work on being more forthcoming with what I share and being more vulnerable. I can try to make sure that I'm not being overly sensitive in moments. There's all kinds of things I can work on. In the same way, there's these things you can be working on, but not every time that you want to grow, it doesn't have to be, well, I have to hit up my, and I'm not saying you're saying this, but this is how some people are, right? I need to hit up my friendly local neighborhood Black man and have a conversation with him so that I can learn about the Black experience. Like, no Black person speaks for all Black people, right? So we have all these different experiences and all these different backgrounds. And so some conversations are necessary, but sometimes there's like a personal accountability that I think that someone like me is looking for sometimes from someone like you, to say, I don't know what I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. And I don't just need to ask you to teach me all of it, but I'm going to go watch some documentaries, read some books, try to just get a more full picture, just a more well-rounded picture. So I don't know if that answered your question. We absolutely can. I just think that many of us are tired, and we want to make sure that in this, that it's not just conversations with us, it's conversations and. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, you know, one thing that has been on my heart recently is about me as a white person being able to advocate with among other white people about accountability for the words that we speak that may be damaging and may be hurtful to people of other races, especially right now, people in the Black community. I really felt like God was showing me that there's power in my ability as a white man to speak to other white people in moments where they maybe are saying things that they don't realize are as offensive as they truly are. you know, and if I can reach out to them, if I can gently redirect what they were saying and maybe offer a more compassionate view of, you know, the words that they're speaking. I really felt like God was saying, there's that verse about bearing one another's burdens. And that there right now is this really hard burden on Black people, that they are feeling pain of watching their own members of their community be murdered, and a lot of people still not seeing the tribulation of that, but almost just being like, well, this is life, you know, the world's not perfect, you know, those cops probably were just trying to do the right thing, and just kind of sweeping it under the rug, you know. And I really felt like God was saying, that is a burden right now that's on the Black community, a burden of feeling unheard and unadvocated for, and that to bear one another's burdens in this season, for me, meant to do some of that educating that you spoke of, and some of that, you know, helping to make people more well-rounded in their thinking. I can actually do that. So instead of a Black person needing to do it like you were saying, there is a possibility, there is an opportunity for me to come into that place to someone who might not read a book, someone who might not watch a documentary, but they will listen to me talk to them for 30 seconds, you know, and they do respect me enough to maybe hear what I have to say. And I can use that 30 seconds to just, you know, gently redirect what I don't want to interpret as malicious, racist hate, but perhaps they just don't realize how that kind of humor or those kinds of comments, how damaging they really are, you know? And I do hear what you're saying about you can only be so ignorant, you know, in 2020 because of the resources that we have and all of that. And I do agree with you on that. Like, there is, like, you turn on Amazon Prime right now, and like the first thing that comes on is like Black Lives Matter stories and documentaries and films that are about that. Like, it's actually being brought to the forefront right now in a way that even more so, it's like, there's no way that you can't see these resources, you know, available to you. You know?
And I'll say a couple of things about that. I got two things. One thing is just like factual. The other thing is real heavy on my heart. So I'm gonna give the factual first, the heart one second. Here's the factual one. If you go on Amazon, if you start clicking on documentaries, everybody knows, okay, a documentary is always going to have a slant. Okay. It's always going to, it's like when we watch the news, right? If you watch a news program, and you watch a story on CNN, there's one slant, and then you can look at MSN.com MSNBC, and there's another slant there. And Fox News, there's a different slant there. And wherever you look, there's a slant. Well, documentaries are the same. There's always a slant. And so the key for me, if I'm really trying to grow, is to say, okay, I understand that there's going to be some sort of a slant, and I may not agree with every part of the slant, but that doesn't mean that there's no evidence of real truth being given and depicted in the story. And so, because what happens sometimes is a person, they want so badly to hang on to their perspective and their perception of truth that they will look for something that is blatantly incorrect, or look for something that is blatantly like against what they believe in, and they throw out the entirety of the documentary. So now the whole documentary is just a farce because I didn't like this. And like that's not, that is dangerous. And so I wanted to say that. I think it's important because that would keep a person, if they decide, hey, I'm going to try to better myself, then they'll feel like if they don't find a book or find a documentary or find 5 books that they agree with every word of, then the word is irrelevant. The book is irrelevant. Like, and that's not how life works. So I think there's like an open mind and an open heart that's necessary in this process. And that takes me to when you were talking about, you know, being able to address words. I don't exactly know how to tell you how to fix this part, but I felt like this was Holy Spirit. You were talking, and what I sensed was words are the flower. What's at the root? So that moment of the racist joke, the uncomfortable, biased moment, the discriminatory moment, but it can be laughed off and it wasn't that big of a deal, or this is just a bunch of white guys and there's no black people even there, and why is this even a problem, or this is just how we grew up, or there's all these different ways that we can frame things.
Yeah.
Sometimes what happens is we try to address those things, and it's like, dude, why are you being so sensitive? Why are you making this such a big deal? It was just a joke. It was just a joke in that moment. It absolutely was. But what we're seeing is the flower. What is deeply rooted in your heart, though? And the biggest things to address are not addressing, hey, man, don't make that joke. The real conversation that needs to be had is, why is it that you're so uncomfortable around black people? Why is it that you feel that black people may be inferior to you? Or why is it that you think that there are all these black people, some of them well-educated with multiple degrees, some of whom make more money than you, have bigger house, depending on who they are, who sit and say, I've been through systematic issues, and yet you disregard their story? Why are there so many people in the world who will tell you what they've been through, and you'll say, well, I don't really believe that there's racism because I haven't seen it. Yeah. Like there's things that are deeper than a joke, and deeper than a comment, and deeper than a statement. And it has to do with what resonates deep inside of our spirit, what resonates deep inside of our heart. And so it's when we get to the point where we can speak to a person's heart posture that we can really affect change. But you can't affect heart posture in the office every day at 12 noon with everybody standing around the computer. Those are intentional conversations that have to be had when no one else is around, that get to the heart of the issue. Well, to be honest, I've never been around white people before. And the only white people that I ever was around, man, they were rude and they were mean. And so I don't feel comfortable around white people. All right, that's cool. But that white person that you just made that joke about, he's a good dude. And you looked at him as though he was the person who did you bad before. And they're not the same person. You took bias and prejudice into that conversation. And maybe you need to do some healing. And so, I'm not telling you should comment about that, right? I'm just saying it's something for everybody to think about. Is that it's more than comments. It's more than just jokes. It's more than a person saying, well, I never make racist comments. Right, you don't make racist comments, but if I walk past you in a store, you clutch your purse. No comment necessary. There are you assume I have worked at jobs. Now you hear me, okay? I am an articulate, educated individual. I have worked at jobs where I have had someone pull me aside and say, and this person, and this is a true story, the person was a director of the building that I worked at. The director pulled me aside. He said, listen, your boss doesn't take you seriously, and I need you to be aware of it because you're going to have to talk to him. I said, what do you mean? He said, he made a comment to me that the director is telling me this about my new boss. He made a comment to me, this is what the guy says to me. He made a comment to me that he doesn't think that you're very educated or that you're very smart. He almost made it sound like he thinks you're slow. And so he has already met with your white counterparts. So there was four people. I was one of the four. We all had the same position. He had met with the first three. And with each of the first three, he'd had conversations with them. What is it that you want to accomplish here? What are the things that we want to work towards with you long term so that there can be some career development? And he had conversations and kind of spoke into their lives and gave them some things to work on. And he had met already in his first couple months with all three other people, but not with me. And so this director is telling me, you need to go talk to him so that he understands who you are and how bright you are, because he's not planning to meet with you. And I told him he should, and he didn't listen to me. And I thought you needed to know that. Now imagine that conversation that I had. Now I have to go address with somebody what they've said. Well, I just don't think he's intelligent. But what I had to do in that moment was to try to get to the heart. I had to ask a question to him of, I was told that you said that you didn't think I was very bright. Is there any truth to that? Well, who would tell you that? Someone pretty relevant and important. He said, I don't think that's exactly what I said. And I said, okay, well, that was the quote I was given. And the person was a person who was higher up in the company than you. So you didn't say that? Well, I don't think I said exactly that. Okay, so you did have some questions? Yes. Is there anything that I have done in the room with you that gave you that impression? Well, I'm not exactly sure what it was that, made me. And I said, okay, have you looked at the performance of the people that I've been training at my job? Have you looked at my statistics versus the statistics of my counterparts? No. Okay, that's weird because we actually track statistics. And if you were to take a look, you would see that my classes rank first in all the classes. And it's been consistent for months. So while you are assuming that I don't bring anything to the table, and while you are meeting with other people, I am bringing you results consistently, and you're not even seeing them. I'm wondering what it is, if I haven't done anything to leave you with that impression, what it is within you that maybe is automatically seeing me as being less than. I had that conversation. These are the moments that most Black people are not going to talk about if they've had that conversation. Like, you don't brag about that conversation. You don't go around and talk about something like that because it's so uncomfortable, and it's so like, who has to talk like that? And why did I have to have the conversation? Why did the director of the place, who told me, not have the conversation with him himself? You put the burden on me to validate who I was. Instead of you saying, you've got it all wrong, you need to meet with him to do your job the right way. He put it on me. And maybe that was God. Maybe that was God wanting for me to develop some courage, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. But I guess what I'm getting at, and the reason I wanted to share that, sometimes we have to get to the heart. It's not about just the comment, but sometimes it's, where is that comment coming from? And I think that man had to walk out of that room, and I never called him racist. That was never a word I used. I think he had to walk out of the conversation and say, what did I miss? How did I get the impression that this guy wasn't bright? There's a lot of things you can say about me because I'm far from perfect, but me being dumb is not one of those things. And so you could say a lot of other stuff. That's not one of them. What's at the root? For me, I have to ask myself what's at the root when I'm checking myself on racism, discrimination, when I'm checking myself about how I feel about white people, how I feel about Asian people, how I feel about how I feel about other Black people. I have to go all the way to the root and not just look at the stuff that's easy to see on the surface, but go down deeper. That's where change happens.
What's going on, family? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Listen, you do not want to miss tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's episode is actually, in some ways, to me, more powerful than this one was. And you guys do not want to miss it. So please tune in. Now, make sure, again, that you leave your suggestions down below of people we should consider having in our further conversations. Also, what haven't we talked about yet? What aren't we addressing? What are the things that need to be said that we need to think about for a video number 3? We will take every suggestion you guys have and at least consider it. So please consider leaving it down below. Make sure that you hit like and share this video with everyone who needs to see it. My name is Maurice F. Martin, and this has been another episode of Today's Inspiration, and this is our first episode of ColorBlind Conversations.